This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to the regular meeting of Council for Monday, May 9th at 7 o'clock. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will someone please move adoption of the agenda? Thank you, Councillor Bond. Thank you, Councillor Back. Seconded by Councillor Back. Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. Council, we have one set of minutes from the March 21st regular meeting of Council. Are there any errors or omissions to those meeting minutes? Hearing none, will someone please move adoption of the meeting minutes from March 21st? I have Councillor Bond. Is there a seconder on the matter? I see Councillor Back. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. Something I should have said right off the top of the meeting is that this meeting is being held in a hybrid format, which means that members of council, staff, and public are participating in the meeting either virtually or in person. We do have our full council participating with 3 members of council and myself participating here in the council chamber, and then 3 members of council participating virtually as well. Throughout the course of the evening, we will have input from members of the public here in person, as well as members of the public who are participating through the Zoom feature that we're using for our meetings. One of the big features of tonight's meetings is going to be the Youth Awards. Every year we recognize youth in our community for excellence and achievement. We're going to get the Youth Awards portion underway right after public input. So the District of North Vancouver preserves a period of time of up to 30 minutes at the front end of each of our regular meetings of council for members of the public to come and raise concerns of interest to them. Each person is permitted a period of up to 3 minutes to address council on topics of their choosing. We do give priority to people who are speaking on agenda items. But tonight I have 2 members of the public that have signed up to speak. Once those 2 members have spoken, we'll still have some time remaining, and if other people would like to add their comments, we'll create a space for that. At this time, I'd like to call up Peter Teven to speak, followed by Tina Ibrahimi. Mr. Teven, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you.
Yes, that's...
Wrong one. Is that better? There we go.
There you go.
Thank you. Peter Teven, 1900 Block, Indian River Crescent. Your Worship and Council, I'm speaking, just commenting really, not in favor or not against agenda item 8.9, the I think it's 2050 to 2070 Marine Drive development proposal. I've got a little bit of data to show you visually, if you can turn on the overhead, please. And this is shown to you for the purposes of putting this in context, okay? What I've done is I have created a housing continuum report out of the data that was presented to you all on April 25th. I got very close. I couldn't reconcile the data. You see here at the bottom, it says 5,997 units versus 5,900. I came within 97 units. I couldn't find listings in the report for 97. But just in context for people who have never seen a housing continuum, on the left side you see the different types of housing within our district, and you see here the heading that this is where we started our current official community plan in 2011. And what we intend to do is over here on the right side, 2030 units. This is the estimated demand, which was an increase of just over 10,000 net new units. And you can see here that with what is currently in process before council and approved, according to my math, we're approximately 9,500 units. If the bulk of everything that's considered by council is approved without huge changes. That's a big if. Just to fit it into context, right now, tonight's proposal 8.9, this is where it shows up in the housing continuum. And of course, the minute you address it as an agenda item, it will move from this column over into the first reading. And this was prepared as at the April 25th, before I knew this was coming up. So of 44 units, this is 41, which are, as you can see here, subsidized rentals. It's 77 out of 464 purpose-built rentals, and it's 212 out of the 363 market purchase condo apartments. So this is a sizable development. And I don't say that it should be built or it shouldn't. But really what I hope that people do is focus on the bigger picture and say, okay, well, how are we doing with respect to, you know, percent of our goals in each category of housing? Where are we lagging behind? And I'm not so sure that this proposal, and if you could put the projection back up, I've got some bullet points here. I think that when we look at what ought to drive decisions to move things from the left side being certain to the right side being more uncertain, I think these are some of the considerations. How much more housing do we actually need? Does the proposal at hand do enough of what we need? And how does it impact the neighborhood? And what about the infrastructure? Can it bear the additional density, or is it better dispersed to other places? So these are what I hope. Just in closing, I sent you all an email today because as a citizen, I have a concern that the two of the principals here donated to a political campaign. I believe that even though the law is unclear, that a recusal ought to happen. I'll put that in the black tray. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next speaker is Tina Ibrahimi. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you. Can I stand for this? Am I able to?
I want you as close to the microphone as possible, actually. That's what we're trying to pick up right there. That's great. Thank you so much.
Move forward here. All righty.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Do I start now?
Yes, please.
All righty. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Tina Ibrahimi. I am president of the council at a commercial building located in 2030 Marine Drive, sandwiched between two major developers, including Section 8.9, which one of the reasons I'm here to address is that. I'm here because of a restless amount of time of just trying to seek council and mayor's attention on our rights, our property rights continuing to be violated and somehow ignored. Section 31 of the Strata Property Act permits me to be here in order to protect the best interest of our Strata Corporation. 8.9, which is the proposal that Mr. Michael Geller will be, I guess, here curious about this evening. They have submitted a development proposal, and one of the biggest problems beyond all the stats that Peter just addressed was that the proposal includes blocking and trespassing on our easement and property rights. And this is a reminder to everybody that our easements are legal and binding, and we are not developing the foreseeable future. Having said that, emergency and commercial vehicles need to be accessible to and from 2030 Marine Drive, which with this new proposal, that would not be viable. We've consulted more than a few experts on this. In addition to that, substantial damages could occur as a result of our commitment to the Strata Corporation. Therefore, we are against this proposal taking place. Topic number 2, which is general communication patterns with the DNV. After further amount of time, we think and are of the opinion that the style of the communication we've received from the DNV thus far is unfortunately that of avoidant and passive communication. They are all live to all the aspects and many, many matters surrounding 2030 Marine Drive, and as most recent as 3 hours ago, having their contractors perform work on our property without our permission. Lastly, we've been left with no choice but to follow up with initiating a lawsuit towards the developers who are to our right, part of the sandwich we are part of, because they have trespassed and built 2 illegal walls without permits on our property, without permission, without authorization, and they are continuing to squat on our property. In addition to that, last but not least, I'm still curious as to know why it is that mayor and council to this day are of the awareness that they should not be aware of what's going on, because it is my understanding that every single councillor and mayor in this room knows exactly what's going on, and they have plenty of documents to back it. But for the interest of those who may have not done their due diligence, I've left additional copies addressed to each councillor and mayor here, just in case you need to familiarize yourself. Lastly, naturally, if we continue on this track record. I'm here to bring attention to the citizens of District of North Vancouver so that these legitimate concerns don't fall as liabilities on the District of North Vancouver. Last but not least, my question remains. Today, elected officials, what are you going to do? Are you going to enforce the bylaws or continuing avoidance? Thank you.
Very much, and your materials will be circulated to the council.
And does that mean that you're not going to get back to me like you guys have for the past 11 months?
We've had regular communications between our lawyer and yourself.
5 months we've been waiting on PAR's response to our legitimate questions about addressing our property rights. And this is what's been happening, diplomatic procrastination at its best.
Okay.
Thank you. Diplomatic procrastination, that's all it is.
Thank you very much. Okay. We still have time in the public input period. Would anybody else like to address council? Mr. Palacio, welcome. And if people are joining us through the Zoom feature, if they would like to address the meeting, just raise your virtual hand and we'll have our clerks review and see if anybody in the participants list has raised their virtual hand, and we'll move you over. But at this time, welcome Juan Palacio. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Well, hello, your worship and members of the council. I'm Juan Palacio from 225 West Kings Road. So this is specifically because of last week's North Shore News article about the stagnation of West Vancouver in the 2021 census. It was titled about West Van, but it did have some good facts about the district. It mentions that the district is 15% of the population of the district is millennials from the age of 25 to 40. The average in Metro Vancouver is 23.1, and in the city of North Vancouver, it's 25%. So we're relatively low. The director of the city program at SFU was referring to West Van and the District of North Vancouver when he referred to it as a stagnation of housing happening in the municipalities. The cost of housing is now far too high for the majority of millennials and Zoomers to continue to live here in the district. We need more affordable housing for us because we love living in the DNV. It is great. A lot of my friends, they now have to come over here from Burnaby or from Vancouver because they can't afford to live here and they don't want to keep living with their parents. And speaking to my friends now, they're even talking about how it would be great if the market would crash. They want the housing market to crash so that they could come buy an apartment or rent something. I don't want that to happen. I know that you guys are smart and you guys can probably find a way to make housing more affordable. You have those ideas, you propose them, but sometimes they're not very clear as to what affordable housing is, and you don't set a very good definition for them. So I hope that you guys think about that, because young voters are going to actually vote in this upcoming election. So think about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I understand we do have a virtual participant who has raised their hand. Corey Cross, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Your Worship.
You have 3 minutes to address the council.
It'll be very short, Your Worship. I'm trying to see if you can improve the quality of your displays, because of recent, especially when people are putting their projections of their presentation on the screen. It seems to be just a magnification of the very small part, which then loses the resolution, so people cannot, like myself, who are not participants, but just monitoring, can not see the numbers or read the numbers properly. So I just want to note that perhaps this can be fixed as the meeting goes on, and I assume the staff presentations will be the usual quality as far as the legibility is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're going to have to look into that, because I think when a presentation is submitted to staff ahead of time, then it's directly showing it through Zoom. But it did seem to be quite foggy, blurry coming through on the... Please.
Thank you, through your worship. That's going to be part of the technological upgrades to the room. Currently, we're running in a system that will be upgraded, which will provide a better user experience to everyone. So that is one of the things that we are looking to improve as well.
So just as an update on that, so district council chambers will be closed for a period of time in June, July, and into the summer break, obviously, and it'll be to rewire the desks so that we have more capabilities and upgrade so that we can take better advantage of these hybrid and Zoom services in the community. So we'll actually be, I think we have 4 public meetings, 2 regular meetings and 2 workshops that we're going to be operating entirely virtually in the month of July in order to be able to facilitate that upgrade of the technology in the room so that it's better when we return in the fall. So we are working on that, but thank you for pointing it out, Dr. Cost. Anybody else like to address the public input period? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on. And tonight we have a very special opportunity. Tonight is the Youth Awards. And I do have a little bit of a script to read just to start us off here. It says, good evening, everyone. And actually what I wanted to do, I just wanted to check in with the clerk. We're going to have everybody that is an award recipient come into the main meeting so we can see them, correct?
Through your worship, we do ask that all recipients turn their camera on at this time. We will be going into gallery view so that everyone may see them.
Yeah, so just for that, so what we're going to do is if everybody turns their camera on, yeah, we'll make sure that you can come in because it's very hard to replicate the in-person pieces where you get to express the warmth and gratitude for people who've done a great job in our community in person. And so we're going to try and make the virtual experience as close as we can by having everybody turn on their cameras so they can see all of the other award winners as well. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Youth Awards. This is an occasion we always look forward to during Youth Week. It's a special opportunity for us to bring our young people together into District Hall to enjoy a small ceremony and celebrate their successes and contributions to the community. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, which was more prevalent at the time we were planning this event, but fortunately the numbers have come down quite a bit, we're having a remote ceremony this year, and we look forward to when we can bring everyone together again in the future. I'd like to hand the floor over now to Ms. Natalie Chang for the presentation of the 2022 Youth Awards. Ms. Chang.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Natalie Chang. I work in the Community Planning Department at the District of North Vancouver, and I am proud to announce the winners of the 2022 Youth Awards. The Youth Awards recognizes individuals aged 10 to 24 in the District of North Vancouver across 3 categories. The categories are Youth Recognition Awards for outstanding personal achievements, Youth Community Enhancement Awards for outstanding contributions to the community, and Youth Supporting Businesses and Outstanding Supporters of Youth. Our recipients have been nominated in a variety of ways by their teachers, managers, coaches, support workers, community organizations, and neighbors for their personal accomplishments and role in making their local community a better place to live. Each recipient has already received their award in the mail along with a small prize for their achievements, but it's still a great privilege to welcome those that have chose to attend our council meeting today. The first category this evening is Youth Recognition and Outstanding Achievement Awards. This category recognizes young people who have made great personal strides, overcome personal or societal barriers, or demonstrated great skill in music, academics, art, or sports. This year's recipients are Audrey Baker. Audrey was nominated by Windsor Secondary School, where she is a key member of her volleyball, basketball, and rugby team. She also contributes countless hours to bettering her school's athletics community through coaching, yearbook, photography, and running intramural leagues. Eliana Juma. Eliana was nominated by Mountainside Secondary for her leadership experience on student council and for overcoming personal challenges to reach her goals. She is a highly empathetic person who goes out of her way to be inclusive of others, also working to overcome their own circumstances. Jalen Jackson. Jalen was nominated by his coaches at Windsor Secondary School for his remarkable work ethic, teamwork, and sportsmanship as a member of the Windsor Dukes basketball team. His coaches were also very impressed by his perseverance and dedication to becoming the best athlete that he can be. Kyle Lois Turtle. Kyle was nominated by Parkgate Society for the positivity that he brings to the Parkgate community. Kyle is a talented artist as well and assisted with redecorating the youth center in 2020. Micadia Gonzalez. Micadia was also nominated by Parkgate Society for her resiliency in meeting her personal goals. Micadia has been making her mark with the Gals and Pals group, where she is a strong advocate for social justice movements, and she is also a youth ambassador for the Squamish Nation Youth Center. Yvonne Kabebe. Yvonne has been nominated by Parkgate Society for her involvement in various aspects of volunteer work. She is an amazing artist who uses her abilities to connect with others in the Parkgate community. And Zeus Spenta. Zeus was nominated by Handsworth Secondary School for his extensive student leadership experience and accomplishments in his literary pursuits. Zeus is the recipient of many international awards with publications in academic journals and anthologies. The second category this evening is the Youth Community Enhancement Award. This category recognizes young volunteers who have made positive contributions to the community by providing at least 75 hours of service on a committee or by working with a local organization or group. This year's recipients are Anders Bergman. Anders has been nominated by Seacove Secondary School for the work that he has done with the North Shore Way, a series of hikes designed to encourage people to connect with the natural landscape of the district. Anders created North Shore Way's website, which was instrumental in building the program's social media presence. Leo Cormier. Leo has been nominated by Mountainside Secondary School for their exemplary leadership in their school community. Leo also dedicated countless hours towards establishing a BIPOC student group at his school. They have written proposals and grant applications and even served as an interim facilitator until one fit for the job could be procured. Charlotte Degenstein. Charlotte has been nominated by Keats Camps. She has dedicated over 800 volunteer hours as a cabin leader, deckhand, and volunteer staff member. Her generosity with her time was integral to maintaining operations over the past 2 years amidst challenges with COVID-19. Mia Martin. Mia has been nominated by Eastview Elementary School for her involvements in student leadership. Mia helped organize events such as Pink Shirt Day and Camp Breed, and also assists with lunch monitoring, morning announcements, and assisting younger buddy classrooms. And Noah Pocky Mamone. Noah has been nominated by Handsworth Secondary School for her student leadership experience and mental health advocacy. Noah also contributed to the writing of School District Policy 409, which promotes cultural tolerance and acceptance in all aspects of students' school experience and endorses the concept of active and positive multiculturalism. Our final category celebrates businesses and individuals that do an exceptional job of hiring and training youth or otherwise providing opportunities, funding, support, or services for young people in the District of North Vancouver. This year's recipients are Natasha Rivard Morton. Natasha has been nominated by Parkgate Society, where she works as a youth center coordinator, enhancing the life of youth through education, advocacy, and building connection. Over the past few years, she developed programs and services that continued to support youth in the district throughout the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Seymour Golf and Country Club. Seymour Golf and Country Club has been nominated by Windsor Secondary School for their support of the Windsor Work Experience program. The organization offers several placement opportunities to help students gain work experience hours and hires local students each year. Congratulations to all recipients of a 2022 District of North Vancouver Youth Award. We would like to thank all of the nominators for recommending these extraordinary people and organizations. These 12 youth and 2 youth supporters have made important contributions to help the District of North Vancouver become a more welcoming and vibrant community. Your worship, this now concludes the 2022 Youth Awards.
Thank you very much. I was just going to have the clerks change the spotlight so we can get the kids up. We have the Well, very few have their cameras on, but that's okay. We just wanted to express our appreciation for all your hard work in the community. Look forward to sharing your future accomplishments with you, and also want to express our appreciation for all the nominators who take time to take an interest and invest back in youth in our community. We really do appreciate your efforts. So on behalf of the Council of the District of North Vancouver, congratulations on your 2022 Youth Awards. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to be moving on with the rest of the regular meeting of council. And all of the young people that have joined us for the Youth Awards, you're absolutely welcome to stick around and stick through a council meeting. Yes, Councillor Murray? Councillor Murray?
I'm just going to turn my camera off because you're all freezing on me. It's getting fixed on Thursday. So I'm just going to turn it off so my feed's a bit better.
That's quite all right. Councillor Murray will still have you as attached to the meeting, but I believe we can still hear you just fine under that. Councillor Kern, I see your hand is raised.
No, I was just looking for the clapping, but we don't have any. We don't. Sorry, is it still raised? I can't see myself on the screen.
I know it's tricky sometimes, but no, it is not
okay.
Up. That's okay now. It's dropped down. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. That means we're moving on to item 8, which is reports from council or staff on the regular business. Council, we do have a very full agenda with 9 items on it. I noted that the first 4 items are rather up and down items potentially. One is being considered for adoption. The other 3 are they're just for approval of the regulatory reporting. So I would propose all 4 of those items for a consent agenda. Would any member of council like to withdraw an item on that list? 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4. Okay, will someone second that as a consent agenda? Seconded by Councillor Back. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. So if you were here for items 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4, those items have just passed with unanimous consent of the council. Moving on to item 8.5. This is the extension of temporary outdoor business areas to March 31st, 2023 COVID-19 recovery. And at this point, I'm going to look over to Mr. Milburn for your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. This item is returning to council as the provincial government has decided to extend their temporary expanded service areas from June 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2023. The district has in the past mirrored those temporary extensions for license areas on public lands, such as in road rights of way. The district currently has 43 temporary outdoor business areas, both on private lands as well as on public lands, such as road allowances. And it is staff's recommendation tonight to extend those permissions to March 31st of 2023. However, I think it's important to clarify that we do anticipate this to be the last extension of these temporary permissions from the province. And we strongly encourage and will continue to work closely with the 43 licensees to encourage them, if they wish, to seek permanent patio spaces, if that includes structures or other amenities. And we will continue to work with them or new patio applicants that come up over the coming period if council agrees with this extension. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray, you have a motion?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes, you're the second speaker. Will you be seconding the motion? Yes. Okay. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Just on the permanency in the future after the extension, I'm just wanting to, give heed to the fact that I think the city of Vancouver had looked at permanent extensions on municipal land, et cetera. And the requirements to actually have that pulled off were, no less short of impossible for some of them. architectural drawings were needed for patios that existed for, the last few years. Going to the extent of an 85-page document to be able to implement permanent structure. So I just want to pipe up now to say, these things, it's not rocket science to be able to extend a patio license into a right of way. And as long as it's not doing any harm, I hope that we support the local businesses and not, create so much bureaucracy and red tape that it defeats the purpose of them trying to continue to exist in this very challenging world of business. We've gone from pandemic to inflation, to costs for transportation that are going to continue to outpace their viabilities of many of their businesses. And, I see us as being here and existing to help people. And often that is not the case. We make it very challenging for people with our rules and regulations and the box checking. So I'm just piping up now to say that we need to support our local business community in any way we can. And certainly I do not want to see any red tape that makes this more difficult than it is, because the existence of these patios have been very welcomed by the local community. And, it's just, we just need to implement a lot of common sense going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Mary. Mr. Milburn, I think there were some questions in there about, how we could potentially both extend the temporary, but then be more proactive about assisting businesses to apply for next year's. Is that your understanding? That
no, Mayor Little, sorry. I don't need any answers to my questions. This is a temporary extension to the patio license till next year. I'm just wanting to have staff hear what I have to say in regards to making these permanent extensions, if indeed businesses want to do that, to make sure that it's simple. So I don't need a rebuttal from staff. I'm just making my comments, and I'm sure once we look at more permanent licenses for patios, there'll be a report that will be brought back, and we can talk about it then. We have a big agenda tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Forbes, your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of things have been answered for me. I was going to ask about what the criteria was for the extension. So now I understand that it's the provincial government that's been granting this each year. And so we're following in the same way that we have the last couple of years. One other thing I'd like to ask, I also wanted to know the number. So it sounds like the number has jumped up in the last year. Maybe Mr. Milburn could answer that. Is that true, that we've had a significant increase since last year or the last report?
Just want to be clear that I think the previous numbers were outdoor patios that were exclusively on district land. This would also include ones that occur on private property. Is that correct, Mr. Milburn?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Is it possible for staff, Mr. Milburn, to send an information report to all of council about who and the locations where most of these are?
Absolutely. Staff can circulate the information about the locations and the contact information if that's requested. Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, I'm not asking for the contact. I just would like to know how, if it's in one area or spread out or whatever. And the only other thing I'd like to ask is, usually when we do this kind of report, usually there's a financial analysis, and there isn't in this report. And so I support the businesses, but I'm also concerned about the inequality, because some businesses can't expand and other businesses can. So just for information purposes, because I support businesses trying to get back on their feet, but just for information purposes, what kind of number, I'm sure it's not very high, but what kind of number are we looking at when we forego these fees?
Thank you, Worship. I asked staff to provide me with an understanding of what the potential revenue would be if the district had not set the fees to zero until June 1st of this coming year. So the period to which council has provided an extension for zero fees. And the total potential revenue following the previous fee rate would be $9,600 in total for all of the patio and extended areas. And then if council approves this extension of a zero fee approach, the total potential revenue that would not be collected would be $14,600. That includes the entire scope of the program from beginning until March 31st, 2023. So the range there is anticipated now, $9,600 that we could have collected if council had not set the fees to zero, or $14,600 if council approves this extension, which is recommended tonight. In total for all patios that are on district lands, because that's where we charge a fee, a licensing fee. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Milburn.
Milburn, it's higher than what I was kind of expecting, but it's higher. Does that 9,000, is that year 1 and 2, or is that the total for those 2 years? So roughly, I mean, I know it would be different, but if you had to average it, roughly 4,500 a year for the first 2 years? Is that how I would look at it?
Yes, that's a rough estimate. Yes.
Okay, so we've got 23,000 in that we've foregone. Just have a
Sorry, Councillor Forbes, I just want to be clear about that. I think Mr. Milburn, when you quoted the total number of 14,000, that's the entire program. It's not 14 and 9, it's 14. So it's not 23, it's 14.
That's correct. So just to be clear,
oh, good.
To June 1st, we anticipate the total program would have otherwise collected over the entire years that council's approved zero fee, $9,600.
Thank you. That makes a difference. Thank you. I just am making a comment here that I know we are not allowed to help businesses out individually. So I assume this is being done because the provincial government is allowing this type of extension that we can make under the circumstances of COVID. Is that correct?
We can waive a fee across a class. We can't specifically say this business is going to get a discount and that one is not going to get a discount.
Right.
But if we waive the fee across all of them, then that's considered to be fair. Mr. Milburn, is that?
That's correct, Your Worship. We also took some lead from the province who's reduced their fees, as well as preparing an abridged approval process, very similar to the district. So we all responded in a very speedy way to industry to try to create approvals for them so that they could adapt to the physical distancing requirements. Similarly, we want to continue to work with our businesses to ensure that they can recover from the pandemic.
Right. We all want that for the businesses. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Back.
Just make sure my mic's on. So first time back in the chamber in a while. Thank you.
Let's just make sure your house mic needs to be on though.
It is on. Yeah.
Okay. You can barely hear him. Go for it.
Okay, we'll try that again.
There you go.
So thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm hugely supportive of extending the temporary business areas, the temporary patios. I think for the 43 businesses that have been able to take advantage of the program, it has been very beneficial, and I know enjoyed by many members of the community to have these new outdoor spaces. And so along the lines of Councillor Murray's comments, I would be very supportive of anything that we can do going forward to make more permanent patios like these an easier process than it is. So anything we can do to do that. I know one of the issues in speaking with a couple of the current businesses that have temporary business areas is the percentage calculation for the actual number of seats on the patios. Because it's a calculation based on the overall square footage. Sometimes they have a very large patio, but they're restricted to a fairly small number of people that they can have seated out on that patio. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of a process that could be introduced for those types of businesses to apply for like a variance or something along those lines. That's my only question, but I'll just say that no, I'm very supportive of extending the program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next speaker is Councillor Kern.
Thank you. Happy to support. I just wanted to, I've brought this up before that people with disabilities have expressed concerns around accessibility. And so I just wondered if staff could make sure that as we're going through this process that we're reaching out to people with lived experience to make sure they're able to successfully navigate, because we are taking public space and using it, and that can be challenging. So I just wanted to make sure that that's still at the forefront of our thinking around this as we move forward as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I had some similar comments about making sure that as we move to the permanent regulations that we reach out to those businesses early. I don't want to see a situation where on the eve of March next year that businesses are in a panic because we're not going to extend it or there's going to be a fee that they weren't expecting. I'd like to see early communication. I recognize that there's approximately 43 businesses that are taking advantages. I think it's about 13 of which are on public property. I'd like to start the process of talking to them about formalizing this as soon as we can. I don't want to see a situation where next spring we have a panic. So I'd like to have staff report back just on how they're going to proactively communicate with the applicants or with the current users of this fee, of this permit. Councillor Mira, your comments.
I just wanted to add one thing, that we need to take into consideration the amount of time that we require on the heels of the comments of the mayor for these processes, and understand that businesses, small business, work 7 days a week, 16, 18 hours a day to keep their businesses afloat in these very challenging times. So staff need to keep in mind that it's not at our opportunity that they come in and deal with what we want them to do. We need to go to them and make it as easy and as streamlined as possible with the least amount of time that they have to give up and take away from their businesses. We are losing small businesses, losing them. They are imploding because of what they are facing and what they have faced. They are just trying to keep their heads above water. And so when we ask them for these exorbitant amount of time to, fill out forms and get, advisors and engineers and architects to come in and deal with things, that is taken away from their business. So we need to make this as simple as we can within the parameters of the legislation to allow them to continue to do what they do. And we need to work for them. They're the taxpayer and we serve them. And I think we need to start getting our head around that a little bit more, because too often we are asking people to give up time away from the things that is putting, meat on the table and vegetables, away from their businesses. And we don't think about what that is doing to them. So I really want us to start thinking differently about how we approach our taxpayers, our businesses, and our residents.
Thank you. Comments, and I think it's also the other challenge is while this may be a process that you do one time, and if it's done correctly, it'll last for a very long period of time. Lots of the businesses also have very short leases. And so they don't want to be putting the full investment in if they've only got a year left on their lease. And so we also have to sort of make sure that, in some cases we can be a little creative to make sure we're adequately meeting the safety standards in the community, but also making sure that businesses, even if they don't have long tenure at the property, have a viable option going forward. Council, I see no further speakers on the matter, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Aye. Thank you very much. Next item up for discussion is item 8.6. This is the housing options for single-family neighborhoods public engagement. The recommendations are in the report there. Will a member of council be moving a recommendation? Okay, Councillor Bond, you're moving the staff recommendation? Yes, is there a seconder on the matter? Happy to second. Okay, Councillor Bond, your comments?
Thanks, Mayor Little. We had quite a long workshop on this topic earlier in the year, quite recently actually. And the proposal here is to go for public engagement on a couple of issues. One is changes to our secondary suite bylaws to allow suites that are more in line with what the new building code regulations have been made by the province, which would increase the size of suites and also allow some other changes in accordance with the new building code. Another item is short-term rentals. So that's a policy that the district has been studying and sitting on for quite a long time. And I think prior to COVID, we were ready to go out with some bylaw changes, but it kind of got put on the back burner. And so we're going out one last time, I think, to the community to ask their preferences about some certain aspects of that potential bylaw change. If anyone in the public is listening, currently short-term rentals like Airbnb are not permitted in the district, even though there are about 500 that do operate on a seasonal basis. And so this consultation will go to seek the public's opinion around various aspects of regulating and allowing short-term rentals in the district. And one final item is housing diversity in single-family neighborhoods. This is a conversation I know that I've been having for a long time. I think it was about 6 years ago where a couple of councillors from around the region and I hosted a series of events. I think in Lynn Valley, we actually hosted an event on this topic, and I think actually Michael Geller, who's in the crowd, was at that event, and we discussed different options about providing housing diversity in single-family neighborhoods. And this could be allowing a coach house or a coach house and a suite or multiple homes on an existing property. And the proposal here is to take these items out to public engagement and see what community sentiment is on all these different topics. So I think the time for this discussion is long overdue. It's a discussion that's been happening for almost a decade in most areas, in many areas across the continent, across North America. A number of jurisdictions have moved forward, even as close as the city of North Vancouver, in allowing more diversity in all neighborhoods across the community. And I think this is the right time for this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the engagement has to tell us.
Very much. Anyone else wishing to, Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. Well, yeah, I can't over stress how overdue short-term rentals is. Good heavens, we're almost in the third council that has brought the issue forward to deal with. And it was the end of the second or the last, not this council, but the council before, that actually gave direction on bringing back, policy in regards to short-term rental. And this council at the beginning of its term did the same thing, asked for short-term rental. And we seem to be really good at processing development applications, but not very good at responding to direction from council in regards to issues that have been around for a long time. And have, challenges, pros and cons for sure. But there's a lot of people that, are operating, short-term rentals in the municipality that would like some certainty about, what can and cannot exist. And so I, again, am perplexed that we're going out for public input. We've gone out for public input. We've had discussions. We've done surveys. And now we're going to do it again. And it seems to be this sort of revolving wheel that we're always on, and nothing seems to get sort of tied up. As far as secondary suites are concerned, if we want to make them a little bit bigger, like, what's the issue? It's not like we're saying double the size. There's a lot of secondary suites out there that have 2 bedrooms and a dining room, plus the basement has a rec room. So there's lots that exist that far exceed the allowable square footage. I'm not sure why we need some big consultation in regards to adding a couple of 100 or 300 square feet to a basement suite. Everybody wants a little bit more space. What is this need for us to do this review again. And then, the sensitive infill, I think we've added coach houses, we've added we've had secondary suites for years. We've added coach houses, and we know that it wasn't a big draw from the electorate to put coach houses in because of the cost. Certainly the need to allow, a small business, a secondary suite, and possibly, and a coach house on a single family property is something that, the city of North Vancouver did a few years ago. I don't know why, again, it's taking us so long to allow that. It seems, something that could easily be implemented just with bringing a bylaw forward. There's some areas in the municipality because of parking that would be a bit challenging on that, but I'm sure we can look at different areas that would be very suitable to have a coach house, a secondary suite, and even allow a small business like an accounting business or something that doesn't draw traffic into the neighborhood. But I think we really have to, this constant need to review and question and review is, for me, getting a bit old, and I just like to get on with it. We've got a lot of development that continues to happen in the municipalities, and we have to start understanding the kind of impact that the build out is going to have on our communities. And I'll speak more about this, such as, healthcare and medical care, for instance. Right now we don't have enough doctors. I'm not sure if everybody on this screen has a doctor. Mine's just cut her practice in half. And so I think we have to start talking about some of those impacts as we continue to redevelop at the pace that we're redeveloping on the North Shore. But as far as these three items, I think they're kind of, no-brainers. And I don't know why we want to spend any more time asking people questions like, what are people going to say? No, I don't want to build an extra 200 square feet on my basement suite. Like, why would that be such a big deal? And the secondary suite or the short-term rental, I mean, I'm going to be pleasantly surprised when we actually do put in some, certainty. I know we've got, we're taking fees right now. The municipality is taking fees, or we're gaining revenue from short-term units that we have a bylaw that doesn't allow them. So I think we've got some big questions to answer.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have any problem. In fact, I think it's our responsibility to be current and up to date. And so I don't have any problem going out and asking the people to their opinion on these things. It may be the same as the last councils. Councillor Murray served on quite a few councils, so it may seem like we're never getting on with it, and maybe we're not. I don't know, but I can only speak for this term, and I don't have a problem with hearing from the public. I do have just a question, and then, well, actually two questions for staff. The first question is, I just want to make sure that we're having some kind of contact with those people. I say this all the time, but with those people who don't use computers. And so they're not on social sites, or what kind of communication are we going to have with those people? Are we going to have like pop-ups or some sort of information sites that they can come to in person? And my second question is, I really like another map on these small lot infill areas, because this map doesn't really tell me anything. It has no streets on it. It has a bunch of hatched areas, but I don't know exactly where that is. So I'm wondering if it's possible that when we do communicate with the public, and also could we have a new map for them that clarifies these areas a little bit more? And could we have a map also sent out to all of council that clarifies these areas a little bit more?
Sure. Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments? Sorry, Councillor Forbes, you were continuing, or?
No, I just wanted to ask if I could get an answer to those two questions.
Mr. Milburn, do we have, Ms. Daly, you're on the call. Do we have that kind of information, like the detailed maps that feed into that information?
Yes, we certainly have a more detailed street map that we could provide with that information. And as to the previous question on how we will be reaching people who may not be online or on social media, we are intending to reach out through at least one print ad with the date and location of an in-person open house is proposed, as well as several pop-ups throughout the community.
That's great. Thank you. Could you also send all of council your more detailed map as well?
Yeah, through your worship, yes, that can certainly be done.
Thank you, Ms. Daly.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I do support the staff recommendations for public engagement on these issues that are set out in the staff report. I think it does represent a reasonable set of steps towards updating ourselves as to the public sentiment on these important issues. I do agree with the comments that have been made previously that this initiative is long overdue. The whole area of secondary suites, and I, of course, brought a motion asking for the incentivization of secondary suites as far back as 2018 on the simple theory that a lot of the housing that's required in our community already exists. It just is sitting empty. But the whole issue of secondary suites and sensitive infill is part of the gentle densification, which is becoming increasingly popular across our region and offers many advantages to our community. So I do hope that we move along with this. I hope that we can stick to the timeline that's set out specifically of the engagement occurring in May and June 2022 with the report back and actions taken by this council in the last quarter of this year. So, but I am, with those statements made, I'm very happy to support the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Next, I have Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a brief comment, because I agree with the majority of comments that have been made before me on this issue. I know that we have had engagement, particularly around some of these topics, like the secondary suites, short-term rentals as well, but I'd be interested to hear from the public for sure at this time to see what the sentiment is in the community around these issues. In terms of housing diversity, and gentle infill. I mean, this is something that I've been talking about throughout the term, looking at other municipalities, just some of them as close as the city of North Vancouver, where you can have a coach house and you can have a secondary suite in addition to the principal dwelling. So interested to hear what the community thinks about it at this time, and very supportive of moving to engagement.
Thank you very much. Just for my own comments on it, I'm also supportive. Specifically, I think the suite size change is something that really has the potential to improve the likelihood that we'll have family size units in the secondary suite rental. I think that when the staff go to the public for that, I think maybe even as a straw man, at least for the discussion, Mr. Milburn, you should put out there up to 50% as the suite size, just because I think it's important to make sure that we, somebody who has a relatively smaller house still has the potential to have a family size secondary suite theoretically in that. The spillover impact into the neighborhood is negligible. And so it's really just about making sure that we have suitable living spaces within the homes for that. So I think that we should be putting out there alternatives, not just simply the 40% or the new proposed maximum. I think possibly even put it up to 50% as I've suggested in the discussion. There's a lot of things that have been proposed as sensitive infill, and when you see them built out of maybe one or two lots on a street, they're quite sensitive. When you see them built out throughout the community, they can be extremely overbearing. And so I'm always cautious about that word sensitive. It's a euphemism to try to make it easier to accept infill into single family neighborhoods rather than into planned transit oriented development in town centers. So I'm cautious about that, but I do think that there are sometimes opportunities to create some sensitive infill. We have some spaces where we have incredibly large lots, and we have some spaces that you have houses that don't currently fit the block pattern for the street because they have a dramatically larger lot than the neighboring properties necessarily, or wider lot. So I'm open to infill, but I may have a different definition of sensitive infill than others on it, but I look forward to the discussion and hearing the public response to it. I also agree that it's time that the district take a more active management role with the short-term rentals in our community. We definitely want to make sure that they're not a deterrent to long-term rentals within our community. We want to be able to defend that space for people who need long-term rental housing in our community. But at the same time, I think there is a place for short-term in a well-managed, well-regulated environment to make sure that we have options for tourists coming to our community. We've lost many of the low-cost hotel options in our community, and if there was a way for them to do some short-term rentals to maybe supplement that, then I think that would assist our tourism operators and our businesses, particularly in also our film industry, which needs furnished suites in the community, and this is a potential to add to that capacity. So optimistic about where this can go. I'll be a little bit cautious on the definition of sensitive infill in some cases, just because it can overwhelm a community. But I will be supportive of this initiative. Councillor Muir, your second time speaking.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I totally agree with your comments and fully support them in regards to the word sensitive. It's sort of like the word affordable. It means something different to everybody. And we still haven't really landed on what that word means. And I'm sure we're probably going to take a while landing on what the word sensitive infill means. And I totally concur with your comments. But I think the one thing that we need to think about, certainly if we're going to, as you say, look at secondary suites with the ability to house a family, and certainly the development community will look at this as an opportunity to build larger suites within new homes. But we still have the issue of secondary suites living subterranean because of our zoning bylaw. And so I'm not sure if we really want to, as a council, as human beings, want to allow subterranean suites to continue to be built in the district. And if any of you have not been in one, you really should visit. It's quite stunning what they look like. You actually have to look up the wall in order to see the sky from a window in a subterranean basement suite. They have to put grates at grade over the window wells, and it's not a pleasant experience to live in one of them. Most of the bedrooms are completely below grade, and I think that we really need to start addressing that, because when homes were first built in the district, basement suites were not part of the equation. They were added later, and lots of these homes were ranchers with basements, and many of them were 3/4 basements where there was direct sunlight coming into the downstairs unit. And now that we have a lot of those homes redeveloping, and because of the way the zoning bylaw is written, these units, in order to get full height, are sinking their basements below grade. And as we know, they're not counted in the overall square footage. And these basement suites are being put in, and they are subterranean. And I don't really think they should be allowed. I think it's a horrible way to live.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes, your comments, second time speaking.
Yeah, just one thing. I recently read an article on StatsCan reports, and although it's not exactly short-term rental, I think that when staff looks at this, comes back and has recommendations, I'd really like them perhaps to consider that COVID showed us that short-term rental it took away from long-term housing that we could have had, and because the investors came in and they wanted short-term, turn it over, make more money, than on a long-term basis. So I just really would like staff to bear that in mind, that the more short-term that we allow, the less sort of long-term housing availability there may be because of that. The Stats Canada definitely showed that as far as investment, not specifically short-term, but I think it's something that needs to be thought about considerably, because those basement suites or above ground suites would be added into our goal to where we're trying to get. So I just would like a consideration from staff when they come to do the recommendations on that. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Bond.
Remember to press the right button here. Yeah, just following up on what Councillor Murray put forward, I'm wondering if staff would include something specifically as part of the engagement to see what the difference between our existing zoning bylaws, specifically around height, would be, and what changes might be required to bring more of the basement home or the basement suite out of the ground. I know I lived in a completely below ground basement suite for about 5 years here in the district, and you do get very little sunlight. I think I had 2 windows in my suite. One of them, again, kind of looking up through the side of the house to the neighboring house, and one out the back. But if we're going to propose changes, I think it's important to show the public what those options might look like. Just like Mayor Little, if we're going to put the changes out there, let's kind of put the ends of what might be acceptable out there, not just what we're proposing. So if we can look at that as part of the basement suite changes as well, and put those out to the public, I think it would be good to get feedback on that.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Curran.
Thanks. I just wanted to share some of the conversations that I've been having around people trying to understand, like, how are we going to do this transformation that we need in this time frame, and what kind of community do we want to live in, and what kind of community we want to be a part of. And it's a little bit more broad than this criteria. So I would like the opportunity in those settings for people to be creative. We know that we need to change car dependency. We know that affordable housing, we know that we have all of these intersecting crises, and we know that we can multi-solve through changes. And so I think specifically around retrofitting neighborhoods is a conversation. You know, people are like, what would make me be able to stay in my community more? What would make it easier for me to not have to travel? And so that transportation piece, I think outside of the context of housing, makes it challenging to have a more creative conversation because of the limitations of our current system. But I'm really inspired by some of the ideas that people are generating in our community. I think everyone would love to have a local coffee shop. You know, we've talked about retrofitting neighborhoods, outdoor spaces where people can spend more time in community. We know that for certain people, it certainly is a privilege, and not everyone is able to work from home, but for people who can, that's changing the way they commute. And so some of these big changes I think are really positive, and I just wouldn't want the input to be so structured that it sort of limited that more creative engagement from the community. But hopefully it won't. But I think sometimes if you ask someone, like, do you want this, or, you know what I mean? Like there's ways to give people more opportunities to say, like, what would be the dream day in your community? Like, what does it look like? That sort of envisioning or visioning, I think, would be really helpful.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
The short-term rental, on the short-term rent, sorry about that, on the short-term rental discussion. And obviously, I and every other member of this council is sensitive to the issue of short-term rentals having the potential to take away from long-term rental. But when the options are put and the public consider the matter, and ultimately when this council considers the matter, hopefully in the last quarter of this year, having received appropriate public input, I do want to put on the table the fact that these short-term rentals are occurring anyway, as Councillor Bond stated, something like 500 of them are occurring seasonally. And our experience across a broad range of public policy questions, I believe, has taught us that it's best where these gray markets are occurring to regulate them. And I hope that we put as an idea or a consideration the fact that we could regulate these secondary suites, we could tax them, they could pay their proper share of our community burden. And in fact, if we were to think creatively, we could use some of that tax money to create affordable housing. And I think in that way, we would actually be ahead and we'd well make up for the encroachment upon long-term rentals that the short-term rentals might afford. So I just want to make sure that we have this broad and full debate on all these topics as we consider them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Curran, your second time speaking.
I just forgot to talk about the light. I used to sell a lot of plants and I met so many renters who were like, what will live in my basement suite that has no light? And I'm like, nothing. No one should be living in places without light. Like if a plant can't live, that's a good indication that it's probably not a good place for humans to live. So I would say that the light is so important for mental health. And there's also a co-benefit to bringing things out of the ground. There's entire places looking at eliminating basements altogether because it's one of the biggest carbon emitters. So I think that we need to make sure that what we're talking about aligns with other commitments that this council has made.
And I think it's new basements are the carbon emitters, I think is fair to say. Ones that have already been built at this point, the embedded carbon is already in place on them. The other thing I was just going to mention about it is I've lived in a basement suite before. It had the well, the light wells, it didn't bother me. So I'm just saying out there as an option, it right now also probably represents the most affordable basement suites that we have in our community, is ones that have some undesirability to it, sometimes affects the ability to command a higher price. And so people who need the housing, sometimes that's okay for them. I'm one of those people who doesn't really like bright. Here I am in the broadcast brightness of the council chamber, but I shop at Safeway at 10 o'clock in the morning because our Safeway shuts the lights off next to nothing, and it's a much more relaxing environment that I find. And so it's not universal, but I do appreciate that. Generally speaking, it improves the quality of life to have decent options for lighting. But I think, council, I don't see any further speakers in the matter, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. Moving on to item 8.7. This is an item that I have a public speaker signed up to speak to. So at this point, I'm going to call on Natalie and Sean Engelman to join the meeting, and they're participating virtually at this point. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Thank you, guys.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Okay,
thank
great.
you. Okay, good. I just wanted to say hello. I'm Sean Engelman. This is my wife, Natalie Engelman, and we're homeowners of the 125 Kensington Crescent. That's Upper Lonsdale, and we live there with our 2 young girls, and they attend Braemar Elementary. Firstly, we would just like to thank you for your time and consideration this evening. And we've put a lot of time and thought into the right solution, and believe this is the best outcome for the retaining wall in the alleyway of our home. We've had the opportunity to review the staff report and agree with the staff recommendations, and our rationale for requesting the variance are just as follows. Requested wall is the same height as the previous wall, and furthermore, the new wall will stay the same height as the adjacent properties. So pretty much exactly the same as what was there. And as well, the new wall has an improved design, safety, and optimal aesthetic to be consistent with the neighboring properties. we're just trying to make it look the same as it was. Also, we optimized the aesthetics with the additional wooden fence added as a creative measure to conceal a portion of the concrete wall variance in our design. We just tried to make, basically we just tried to make the wall look like the way that you have your
requirements are. So there
Yeah,
would
your
never be
requirements.
more than the 3 feet of concrete showing. The rest would be hidden by
The wooden wall.
The wooden wall and plants.
Exactly.
Right.
And then additional green space will be maintained in the rear yard of our property. And finally, we have full support from all the neighbors. We've talked to all the neighbors
At length.
at length, and just everyone agrees with what we're doing. And thank you for your time. That's all.
Thank you very much. First speaker I have is Councillor Murray. Do you have a motion?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on the motion? Councillor Hanson, you're the second speaker. You second? Yeah, seconded by Councillor Hanson. Councillor Murray, your comments.
Thank you to the Engelmans for coming out. And I know this is a process you probably don't usually take part in on a regular basis. And oh my God, council, what are they going to do? Give us our wall? Yes, we're going to give you your wall. No problem. I would like to raise this though as an issue going forward, Mayor Little, that, you know, these variances that are coming forward, there's got to be a way for us to figure out how we can put these variances where they have all the support in the neighborhood. They're very minor, you know, into a place that they can be expedited. Because I know I gave an example a few weeks ago about a 8-foot variance up in Blue Ridge, and they were given this very sort of lengthy amount of time because part of the reason was getting an item on an agenda, because we don't meet regularly. You know, then there's summer breaks, there's spring breaks, there's Christmas break. And, you know, these things are for, you know, families like the Engelmans. They're trying to get contractors to come in, do it when the weather's dry, if it ever is going to stay dry for a period of more than a day. I feel like it's going to snow again. So there's got to be a way for staff to bring back some sort of recommendation to us on these no-brainers, that we put them in a place that they can be expedited through the council process. I still want to be able to see them in some way, but you know, there's got to be an easier way for them to get to us in a quicker, more expedited way. I'm fully in support of this variance.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments.
Yeah, thank you. I'd also like to thank the Engelmans for coming out. I visited the site yesterday, and I would also agree with Councillor Murray that for matters of this level of simplicity, perhaps we could find a system to expedite variances of this type. That said, I do support the issuance of this development variance permit to facilitate the construction of the retaining wall. As I say, I had visited the site. The issue here has been created because the original retaining wall was constructed prior to the updating of the current zoning bylaw. The replacement of the original retaining wall therefore requires a 4.7 foot variance. To comply with the current height restrictions would result in a loss of a strip of land at the south end of the lot of approximately 6 feet. In the circumstances, I believe that the variance is appropriate. I note as well that the adjacent neighbors and local community association have been notified, and all are in support. So we're very pleased to support this variance.
Thank you very much. I will just respond to that aspect since both the mover and seconder have raised it. But this council just changed the retaining wall regulations this last year, and since that change, I don't think we've had any retaining wall proposals come forward. Possibly this is the first. Maybe there was an additional one in there. I can't recall. So it's not something super frequent. The other aspect is the council actually made retaining walls more strict in the last go round. So I would be completely understanding of staff being cautious and bringing matters forward to the council for consideration. Having said that, I was going to put it forward for consent tonight, but since the Engelmans made an effort to come out to the meeting, I decided not to put it in consent for that. But so I'm
sure they would have been happy just to turn their camera off, Mayor Little, and go.
I wouldn't want to deny them the pleasure of participating in the meeting.
You're trying to suck them into council meetings. I know you.
I will be very happy to support this as well, but I did just want to say that we did make it more strict, and we made it more strict with the specific intention of the street-facing side of a house, because we were seeing instances, particularly in the upper side street, where you were getting this real fortress effect, where the first retaining wall would go in, and then there was a 45-degree incline to the next retaining wall, and there's almost a parapet was forming because you had these successive levels of retaining walls in order to be able to flatten out a space. That's not what's happening here in this case. This is an update of a very aging piece of infrastructure supporting their backyard, and I think that the way they've approached it is very sensitive to the neighbors, and glad to hear they have the consent of the neighbors. We made it more strict to deal with very different circumstances in the neighborhood, but again, I don't think that this is a particularly controversial one. At this time, I see Councillor Bond. Your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little, and thank you to the Engelmans, the applicants, for coming out tonight. I wanted to ask a question of staff. Due to the recent bylaw changes that were made to the retaining walls that were passed by council, one of the concerns that I brought up at that time was situations like this, where unintended consequences of trying to deal with a very specific issue, then applying to a broad scope of retaining walls across the district. I know I'm looking out of District Hall right now. I see 2 retaining walls right on the property line that are likely greater than 3 feet. And should those retaining walls have to be replaced, it seems like there's going to be extra time and cost added to the process. So I was wondering if staff can give us an idea, compared to the previous process where this would have just been permitted under the zoning bylaw, likely some form of construction permit, how much time and effort has been expended by the applicants on going through this process, getting the results from the neighbors, and perhaps additional building or engineering fees and drawings, and obviously the time to come before council and have us talk about this issue for half an hour.
Mr. Milburn, do you have a response?
Your Worship, Ms. Yan Zhang, I believe, has prepared some responses.
And I should officially introduce Yan Zhang as our new senior planner here with the District of North Vancouver. The council had the pleasure of meeting her earlier today, but you've been in your office for a week now, and we're going to throw some questions at you here. So do you have a response to the concern about the time it takes to get a retaining wall permit approved in the district?
Yes, Your Worship. I can try my best to start the response, and maybe Mr. Milburn can augment my response. So first of all, I just wanted to clarify, even under the older regulation that was replaced by the newer regulation, this particular application will need to go through a DVP process. And then the reason of that being that I think it was at the time of the application, there was no proof of a survey plan showing the old retaining wall, and then old retaining wall was in this replacing this repair and was already fallen aside. So there was no proof of the existing non-conforming condition, and we couldn't really grandfather it. And so I think moving forward, we can definitely look at this situation from a more district-wide basis, looking at retaining wall and the new regulation, and then looking at some of the existing non-conforming conditions, and maybe looking at grandfathering those applications if they meet certain criteria.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. It seems like a rather straightforward thing that a property owner, or many property owners across the district, might want to do, is replace something that they already have on their property. And if there's a way, as Councillor Mary and Councillor Hanson have mentioned, if there's a way for us to streamline that process, I think that makes it better for everyone and allows council to focus on some of the bigger issues in the community as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Forbes, your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you for coming out, Mr. and Mrs. Engelman. And thank you, because I think this is the first retaining wall situation since we passed the new regulations. And it does point out, as a few people before me have already said, that we need to have a simpler, quicker process. So I thank you for sort of being the guinea pig to bring it to our attentions. But I'm in favor of your retaining wall. I think it's going to be a gorgeous looking retaining wall. It's too bad it backs onto a lane, but it's very attractive, and I have no problem in supporting it for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray, your comment second time.
Well, I can't help but provide a little bit of education in that we're talking about retaining walls, but I think my comments prior to this, Mayor Little, was just about the variance process on things that are, as Councillor Hanson pointed out, are very simplistic and simple, have all support in the neighborhood, and really are no-brainers. We're not going to turn it down. I think we have had one application in regards to a retaining wall since we implemented. And yes, Mr. and Mrs. Engelman, you did have to go through this process, but I'd like you to understand why you had to go through this process. And so I will point out two properties that you might want to peruse on one of these rainy days when you're bored and you want to go for a drive. Drive by 3623 Sunnycrest up in Upper Capilano off Edgemont, and then drive by 4464 Skyline Drive and see what those two property owners are dealing with because of the previous retaining wall program that we had in the District of North Vancouver. Their entire side yards have been taken up by a mass amount of concrete. They have, their properties have been impacted so significantly because of a bylaw that allowed for no judgment in regards to placement of a garage and or a front yard pool. And I didn't, that kind of impact for any resident is not a good thing. And yes, this took time. You had to spend a little extra money to do this program, maybe a lot of money, no judgment. But the impact to property owners dealing with the large amounts of concrete that are coming in because of redevelopment on houses was absolutely abusive. And I would not want to wish that on anyone. So we changed the rules so those retaining walls were not going to be as impactful as they have been. And the amount of concrete that's been used in the District of North Vancouver as of late is something that we don't need to do. We can look at other ways to deal with these things. So thanks again for your patience. And I certainly, Ms. Zhang, nice to meet you. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, but I look forward to some way of streamlining these processes in the future.
Thank you very much. I do just have a question for you, Ms. Zhang, I guess. The old design had in and of itself, because of the cracks formed, because of the rock nature of it, because it was lower, it probably didn't have to retain nearly as much water. What steps do we take for water metering? And I use metering in the definition of metering being the release of water, the planned release of water from a site, to make sure that this doesn't just become a big, huge pool. How do we determine that there's enough permeability so that this area is not just going to retain all the water behind the retaining wall, it's going to actually slowly release it down into neighboring properties and groundwater?
Well, Your Worship, unfortunately, I'm not an expert in that subject area, so I don't have any building department colleague here with me tonight. But what I can promise, I'll certainly follow up with my building department colleagues and building code specialists and to see how this is actually impacting the off-site runoff.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that at the top of page 6 of the report, 226 of the council package, it doesn't show any breaks in the concrete for planned release of water from behind the space. And so just wondering what we'll do about that. Mr. Milburn, did you have a response?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, with any permit process, we do look at not only this physical structure and in terms of its ability to retain the earth, but also its impact on the control of water on the site and the direction of runoff. And so that is reviewed by our staff, and so our mechanical inspectors do review these plans. And if it is determined that an engineered design needs to account for the direction of that flow, we'll ensure that that's guaranteed through the permit process. And because these issues come up on a regular basis, we need to control those flows, and I think Your Worship raises an important issue, and it is addressed through the building permit approval process. Thank you.
Yeah, just reminded of one Councillor Murray and I worked quite closely with, which was a project down in Premier Street, where they built retaining walls around a garden, and it retained so much water, didn't release any of the water, that it ended up killing everything that was in it. And so while I love that retaining walls help us meter or slow down water release after a storm event, at the same time, if they pool too long, they'll end up killing everything that's in it. It needs to have some relief valve of some kind, but we'll leave that to the engineers. That is not my expertise. I don't see any further speakers on the matter. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to item 8.8. This is the bylaw 8568, rezoning from public house commercial C6 to employment zone light industrial at 1970 Spicer Road. And I'm looking to staff. I see Mr. Milburn on. Will you be making the opening remarks on this matter? Yan Zhang, welcome.
Your Worship, I'm happy to make a really brief remark. So tonight before you is rezoning application at 1970 Spicer Road. It is from the existing zoning C6, which is the commercial zone, to EZLI, which is employment light industrial. So the purpose of the rezoning is really return the site to the fold of industrial land stock within the Maplewood industrial area. Just by way of history, in mid-1990, a pub was built on site, and then zoning was changed to C6 to accommodate the pub. And the pub was closed and sitting vacant since 2020. And then the current owner intends to run the site as a vehicle storage for a landscape construction company as a support service. So given this unique situation and Council's strategic priority of retaining industrial lands, staff do support this rezoning application. And just to briefly talk about the applicant's plan to proceed and operation side of things. So they plan to demo the existing building, and we'll make sure that there are safe procedure in place and proper permits pulled. And because the site is going to be used as vehicle storage, so no development is going to happen on site, no building going to be built on site. The operation itself would be regulated by noise bylaw, nuisance bylaw, as well as Metro Vancouver's air quality regulations. And if in the future they do want to build on the site, then in that future state, the application will be subject to DPA. So that's formal character DPA, environmental DPA, flood zone DPA, and as well as another round of community consultation. So, so tonight, this is the first reading of the bylaw, and if council so wish, this will be referred to a public hearing. And
thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, I have you as first speaker. Do you have a motion?
I move the staff recommendation.
Okay, staff recommendation moved by you, and Councillor Murray, you're on the list. Will you be seconding the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. I know this site well, and I'm very pleased to vote in favor of this rezoning going to public hearing and first reading. The rezoning, if approved, would accommodate a local business. There is, of course, a growing shortage of light industrial lands in the district, indeed across the region. The surrounding properties to this property are light industrial. And I noticed that there is a neighbor opposed to this rezoning. At the same time, I look forward to hearing from the community at public hearing, and very pleased to support it going to first reading. Thank you.
Councillor Muir, your comments?
I'll support going to hearing on this. It's, you know, it's sad to see one business, you know, end. You know, the Maplewood pub was there for many, many years and certainly contributed to the community, but very challenging over the last little while. And yet it's equally as challenging for, you know, those companies that are not able to find any place to store their vehicles. And, you know, we talk about transportation and impact of GHGs. And here we've got huge businesses that exist that were born and bred on the North Shore. And they are looking elsewhere because there is going to be, you know, very limited places to store their vehicles. And we have to think more creatively in regards to how we are going to accommodate these large vehicles, these large trucks. We have empty parking lots sitting at night. And I think we lost something when we rezoned Canoxy's property on Dollarton when we didn't include storage of vehicles on those lots in the evening, because there's many areas where they could be, you know, accommodated. And there's businesses that are growing and struggling because they have no place to put their vehicles. So I'll be very interested to see the comments of the public hearing, and we'll support going forward. Who's the next person on the list? I don't see any other speakers. The mayor's just stepped out for a moment. We'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. The next item, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, through your worship. Next item would be 8.9 bylaws 8573, 8574, 8575, 8576, and 8577. Rezoning and housing agreements for mixed-use development at 2050 to 2070 Marine Drive and an unaddressed lot. I would note that we do have a public input speaker, Michael Geller.
Mr. Geller.
Your worship, in absence, members of council here and on the screen, I'll be brief. You'll shortly be getting a comprehensive presentation from your staff. I have not prepared a PowerPoint presentation this time. You've had to sit through two already over the course of the last year and a half. But what I would like to do is briefly highlight the reasons why I'm hopeful that you will agree that this proposal should now go forward to public hearing. Before I do, though, I want to just recognize the efforts of staff who literally have worked day and night for many months to help bring the report before you and to bring this matter to your attention tonight. As I've sat in this council chamber and listened to you, one of the things I've heard is the need for broader housing choices in this development. When I started talking to the owner 8 years ago, it was assumed this would be 100% condominium, just like the development next door. Tonight, you have before you a project that has condominium housing, but with a variety of innovative programs. Lock-off suites that provide rental housing, or mortgage helpers in the sky, as one journalist dubbed them. We have rental housing. We have non-market rental housing. And indeed, even within the condominium segment, we have a variety of programs. Local first, so that people who live in the city and the district will have the first choice for 2 months before the units come to market. We're also working on an innovative rent-to-own program, which will provide a housing choice that has been proposed before, but which I think will help some people get into the market. The next thing, which I think is essential, is the Lionsgate Village has the potential to be a wonderful new neighborhood center in your district. But what it needs is the completion of the road, and it needs the completion of the park. And that's something that will happen with this development. In addition, there's a number of easements, there's rights of way, and as noted in your staff report, 44% of this 2.6 acre property, 44% will be publicly dedicated, including Dedications along Marine Drive to allow for new landscaping, bicycle lane, improved rapid transit, and a variety of other easements throughout the site. I've heard many of you express concerns in the past about the scale of the development, the height of the building, the massiveness at the very top. As a result, design changes have been made. We changed the design of the street wall along the pedestrian street to bring down the scale and make it more friendly. We've enhanced the accessibility of both the overall site and the units so that anybody in a wheelchair will be able to get around the site, and in slightly more than the minimum number of units will be designed to maximize accessibility. For those of you who've been concerned about parking and traffic, and I think that's everybody watching us tonight and everybody who's paying attention, we have made a dramatic reduction in the number of parking spaces. This bylaw required 610 spaces. We're proposing.
If I can have you draw to a close, you're going to get a great opportunity at a public hearing potentially, but it's still just 3 minutes.
Oh, I see. You were here. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go.
Draw to a close.
Well, I hope that, as you'll see from the staff report, this will be truly a model sustainable development. It doesn't have a high-rise passive certified development, but it does have a passive house, non-market housing. Pace of development, I think that's no longer an issue. And I think it'll be a wonderful gateway into the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Josh. Okay. Yes, and as I said, when we move in a public hearing context, so this is first reading, this is just for council's consideration. If it moves beyond first reading, then it would be referred to a public meeting, and at a public meeting, the developer would have a more fulsome opportunity to go over all of the features with the public present for their consideration. But at this time, it's just the initial considerations by the council, and I have raised my hand. I will be supporting issuing first reading and referring the matter to a public hearing, as the staff recommendation suggests. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Kern. Okay, yeah, so just my comments on the matter. We've already had a couple of discussions about the space, and well, I have had some overall general concerns about the redevelopment in the general neighborhood and the nature of it, and some gaps that I think we're going to have in the long run. I don't entirely put them on the shoulders of this development to come up with solutions for all of the neighboring properties. However, this project has already been altered, I believe, to the benefit of the community in responding to many of the priorities set out by the council at our early input opportunities for this project. And so I do think that it warrants taking the matter to the public and seeing what the neighborhood has to say about this space. So I'm going to be supportive of first reading at this time. Councillor Kern is the seconder. Do you have any comments?
I just wanted to correct Mr. Geller when he said that it wasn't a passive, it was a social housing passive project, just so you know. But I do agree that this has progressed from where it started, and it does offer a diversity of housing. The 41 unit passive equivalent affordable or non-market units. I think if council can agree by looking at the rents that anyone would be thrilled to have a brand new 3-bedroom passive house in a town center for $1,725 a month. And there's actually 4 3-bedrooms proposed, which are really hard to find for families. So I think that this has a mix of housing. I would support no parking, but the developer has taken it from 600 to less than that. I mean, I think this is a place that as we transition away from a private ownership vehicle model, these places are great for expanding into other ways to move about. And I just wanted to clarify that I didn't see those first time, but that each building has green roofs, or maybe staff could clarify. Because I think in that area, can staff just clarify, do all buildings have green roofs?
Kevin Zhang, can you confirm?
Hi. Through your worship, 2 of the taller buildings have green roofs. The non-market rental building does not have a green roof.
Not yet, no. Yeah, but I think that green roofs are something that we need to be doing. They have multiple benefits in terms of biodiversity and also mitigating rainwater and also helping with the heat island effect and keeping buildings cooler. And I was just at Lions Gate because we just opened our new rec center. And I agree, it's missing a park and there should be another park soon enough, and also a coffee shop. And I would like to clarify, what's the size of the commercial unit that's being proposed?
Through your worship, the cafe is about 574 square feet.
Okay. So I think that was a place that I said we should have a food truck, a coffee truck here, because there wasn't anything in that area, but there's a big playground. There's people starting to move in, and yeah, I'm interested in hearing from the public, so I support this moving forward.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I am not supportive of this proposal going to rezoning at this time. I do wish to thank the staff for all of their hard work in bringing this proposal to this stage. And I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts of the applicant to revise the proposal to meet the needs of our community. And I would not wish any of my comments to be taken as any type of criticism of the applicant nor their team. In my view, we must view proposals of this type through three lenses: a housing lens, a transportation and other infrastructure lens, and a climate action lens. In my view, this proposal at this time fails on all these criteria. I believe this rezoning not to be in the best interest of our community when viewed through these lenses. Also, I would emphasize that 64% of the proposal is market condos. I promised in 2018 in my campaign that I would not support projects that were predominantly market, instead favoring social, rental, and affordable. I'm proud of the record of this council in advancing rental, affordable, and social, and I have not voted for more proliferation of market housing at this time. Let us start with the housing lens. This has 64% of the units market. The price of those units will be from 1 bedroom to 3 bedrooms in the range of $500,000 to over $1 million. This will require down payments of $100,000 to $200,000 and incomes approaching $100,000 to well into the $150,000 range. This doesn't address the needs of affordability. It doesn't help the children in my family, for example. It gives us more of what we already have and fails to provide us with the meaningful diversity and housing mix that we require. The 77 market rental, 41 non-market rental, and rent to own do not balance out the fact this is essentially a strata project. Public transportation and infrastructure, the proposal calls for 373 parking stalls in an already busy and congested area of the district. There are no significant upgrades to transportation infrastructure in the immediate future. In addition, what about our plans for schools, medical care, family doctors, and hospitals? I believe that significant population growth of this type should be synchronized with investments in this broader infrastructure. Show me the plan to get these people family doctors, and I'll look more favorably on such increases in population. What about parks, park space, and recreational amenities? I want to comment briefly on the use of the phrase mixed use. We're told this is a mixed use development. The mixes of use are one 574-foot commercial unit and 330 residential units. The balance, if we're going to be specific about the arithmetic, is 574 feet balanced against 310,849 feet. This is a ratio of 1 to 540. It doesn't represent a very balanced mix. And climate lens, I'll use my additional 2 minutes if I may. Climate lens. Earlier in the term of this council, we passed a declaration of climate emergency. At that time, there were many sincere statements about the importance of making climate our priority. Subsequent to that time, we've witnessed heat domes and atmospheric rivers, which highlight the importance of that issue. Indeed, it would indicate to us we were on the right track. We do face a climate emergency. In my view, the construction of a 27-story concrete tower with 373 parking stalls in an already congested area of the district can only be seen as poor climate policy. Concrete high-rises and more cars are not my green vision. The embodied carbon alone in the 27-story concrete tower makes this proposal appalling climate policy. Can only be bad for the climate. For all of these reasons, I'm not supportive of this proposal going to rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker I have is Councillor Bond. Your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Little. And just before I get started my comments, I'm happy to disclose that two individuals, Rahim Fakari and Sarah Fakari, who I've been notified by a member of the public are principals of the applicant's development company, made contributions in the last local election to the Building Bridges Elector organization, which sponsored 4 candidates for council, one of them who was myself, and 1 candidate for mayor. I'm going to be supporting this proposal move forward to public hearing. And I think there's a lot of reasons. One has been mentioned by yourself already, the mayor, that the proposal and the applicant have made and adjusted to the concerns and the questions that have been made by council. And we've seen this actually, I think, twice in an early input hearing, and the applicant has made subsequent changes to the project at both those times to further address the changing desires of council since this project started over 6 years ago. Noting in the report here, our OCP action plan that was passed by council quite recently last year has 8 priority actions. And this project actually addresses 7 of those priority actions. And so if council is looking forward to follow through on the plans that we have passed and the vision that we have set, this project might be a good example to have our consideration. Noting the area, I know that this is probably one of the best places from a climate perspective and land use perspective to be allowing more people to live in our district. It's if people in the district are working downtown or working on the Marine Drive corridor, this location is less than a 10-minute bus ride away from downtown. It's a 15-minute bike ride away from downtown, where a lot of local employment, especially in the district, a lot of people commute to Vancouver for work. And so having more people moving here instead of the alternative, which would be farther afield, say in Langley or Maple Ridge, or even further than that, maybe they're moving to Squamish, as a number of our staff members have, is actually good climate policy. It's better to put more people close to the jobs, even if it's a concrete tower, than to force people to move 50 or 100 kilometers away and drive their cars that far to reach employment. This project has a lot of great merits. I'm not going to go through all of them. That's probably better left for the public hearing. But I think that because it's responded to all of or a number of the council policies that we've set, all the OCP, our local area plan, our OCP action plan, and a number of the suite of plans that we've had, it's definitely worth moving this forward to a public hearing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bond. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I want to thank Councillor Hanson for his very eloquent words, and I agree with every point that he made. You know, part of creating neighborhoods and sustainable neighborhoods, and that's what this OCP was all about, was to be able to, you know, have people, you know, live within a community. And I think Councillor Curran spoke in regards to that a couple of items ago. It astounds me that we are considering a development that is called mixed use when the commercial space, as Councillor Hanson points out, is a mere 600 square feet and is a coffee shop. You know, the entire lower Capilano road at Marine Drive has undergone a complete transformation and has a rec center. I think there's a uniform rental store, and we're just about to get a coffee shop. I'm not sure if that's, I'm not sure that was the vision of the official community plan. The idea that in this place that we're at in regards to real estate and the value of land that has gone up exponentially in the last 10 years, and continues to rise. Certainly the condo market continues to be hot right now. That the economics don't work more in our favor for, the affordable housing that we're trying to achieve in a development such as this. 41 non-market rentals is all we get. Do you know how much lift is on this land since it was purchased? It's incredible to think that the arguments against the ability to accommodate within a pro forma additional, maybe 100 social units, but we only get 41 non-market. You got to do the math, people, on this one, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense. The rent-to-own concept is a Habitat for Humanity concept, and if it actually circulated further, Mr. Geller, I hope you're still in the audience listening. I wish you guys would have considered the rent-to-owns to be in continual in perpetuity instead of to one family or one couple. They get the deal, and yet then they get to turn around and sell the unit when they want, and they make the profit. Whereas Habitat for Humanity is a cycle. Today, Kelly Bond, who sat on our affordable housing task force, sent a letter to us. We all got a copy of it. It was done through an FOI. And it was the second letter the districts received, certainly only the second letter I've seen in 26 years from the Ministry of Transportation in regards to the amount of development the district's undertaking and the state of the roads and access and transportation. I hope that is going to be, I'm requesting that be addressed during the public hearing, as I assume that this will be moved to hearing. We didn't get the presentation from staff. I don't need it. There'll be another one during the public hearing. But I think it's something that we need to address because the first one that we got was on Emery Place for Mountain Highway. And the ministry had concerns about the traffic then. And I think, and just to enclose Mayor Little, I think Councillor Hanson has raised something that I've raised in the last couple of weeks as well. And I raised it again this evening. On May 19th, there's a group of doctors that are going to be going to Victoria. My doctor, I've had 3 in my lifetime, all in the Seymour. And my doctor has just recently sent letters to half of her patients saying that she can no longer provide the care needed for them. They are overwhelmingly overworked right now, general practitioners. She shared with me today, I was at an appointment, that she is doing between 2 and 3 hours every day of unpaid paperwork. The GPs are a dying breed, unfortunately, because most doctors would like to be specialists. She cannot any longer accommodate her family and accommodate all the patients she took on when she took over this practice from my last doctor. There was also a comment based on the heat dome last year where, we lost hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people due to heat exhaustion, most of them seniors. And she commented that seniors buildings, and I think the one across the street, Cedar Park, was not equipped with air conditioning. And it's a big concern as we move forward, certainly with these supportive living buildings that we're allowing in the municipality. This climate change and the impacts of the weather are going to, as we all know, get worse. And we need to prepare for that because that is, absolutely a massive impact on the medical system. But my doctor, Dr. Andrew Lee, who retired close to 10 years ago, used to always say when I went into for an appointment, he'd say, Lisa, all this development that's going on, who are going to look after all these people? Like, there's just not enough of us to look after them. And we're seeing that right now. There's been news stories, there's been newspaper articles. The GPs are, going to speak to the provincial government. There's just not enough doctors that will care for you on a regular basis. And these small care clinics that are being built, they are not consistent care for patients as they walk in. You get a different doctor every time you come in. They can't do blood work. There's a lot of diagnostics that they can't do, and they're not the solution to everything. So when we bring all these people into a community, we actually have to look after them. We can't just build, housing for them. And a lot of this housing is very unaffordable for most. I mean, this housing that we're considering right now is going to be some of the most lucrative because of the views on the upper floors. And that's why they want the towers, because they are commanding views of Stanley Park and the Strait of Georgia. And they will command the highest values of condos in the district. So, you got to ask yourself, why do we have to do everything at once? Why don't we wait for the build out to occur? It's still not complete. The towers around this building are still not complete. And we've got a lot of issues on our hand, least of all, inflation that's going up and the price of gas at $2.22. Councillor Curran talked about no cars, and I did raise that a couple of councils ago. If we used Mountain Highway as an area not to allow any parking on Lower Mountain Highway in the new Lowerland Town Centre. It was a captive audience because the area is basically landlocked, and it would have actually probably been a success, but it was something council was not interested in looking at. But the question arises that if everyone turned around and got rid of their gas guzzlers at $2.22 a liter and bought an electric car, where are we going to put them? Lower Capilano is not sustainable. Everybody has to get into a car to go shopping. And even if you put a grocery store in there right now, they're going to be the expensive grocery stores. And, inflation is affecting everyone, even those with deep pockets. So I think this is not the appropriate time to move on this one. I think we should wait, and I think we should, let things build out and see how it works out and then move forward. Rome wasn't created in a day, and the district doesn't have to redevelop everything at once.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to say that I have the same concerns that are mentioned by Councillor Hanson and Councillor Murray. So I won't repeat any of those concerns that they said, but I will add a couple more that popped out at me. The 30% below market doesn't really impress me because we're trying to get more affordable housing into the district, and that should be 30% of income rather than 30% below market. Market could be sky high, and 30% below is still not going to be affordable to a lot of people. I'm also concerned about the rent to own part of it because even though there's not that many of them, but you still have to live there 2 years before you can switch to a rent to own. And when you do that, during that first 2 years, you still have to pay market rent and strata fees. So that's a bigger expense than if you just were renting. So it's kind of a bit of a double whammy, if I'm understanding that right. And that doesn't seem to be a very good rent to own plan. And again, Councillor Murray mentioned the in perpetuity idea. Something else that I'm concerned about, or I would like more information on anyway, is that when we get into 2-level parking garages is one thing, but then one of these buildings is going to have a third level parking. So then I need more information as to the water table and what that means if we're going down 3 levels of parking. Are we going to have water issues because of that in that area? Like everybody else, traffic is a concern of mine because there's only one road in and one road out. And after this particular development, we're going to have West Vancouver building closer to the on-ramp to the Lionsgate Bridge. And the West Vancouver traffic can only come out into North Vancouver too. So there's still an awful lot of people that are being forecasted to be in this very small area with quite a few towers. The noise that's going to be there for people, I know that the buildings are most of the buildings anyway, have built to combat a noise factor. But I can't help but think if you want to open up your window, so much for soundproofing, and you're going to have an awful lot amount of noise. Capilano and that section of Marine Drive are one of the busiest, and that intersection is also famous for how many accidents it has. So you're going to get noise, you're going to get dust, you're going to get everything. And I just don't know about how that works out for people. Some people may like that. I wouldn't particularly want that. The other thing is the infrastructure. We are not keeping up with the infrastructure. We're not keeping up with roads. We're not keeping up with repairing what we do have in infrastructure. We're not keeping up with the amount of people we're forecasting coming in for health services like Councillor Murray mentioned. There's almost 1 million people in BC who don't have a personal doctor. I don't have a personal doctor. I lost mine about 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm one of the many, and the walk-in clinics, as Councillor Murray said, don't cut it because there's no continuity. And if you do get a walk-in doctor that you can go into, oftentimes there's such a long wait. I had a citizen email me the other day and tell me about her mother sat in emergency in Lionsgate Hospital for hours. And finally her mother, an elderly lady, said, I just want to go home. And her daughter took her home because she couldn't wait anymore in emergency. That's what we need to take care of, our basic services. And we need to be looking at affordable, which is what this council was looking for, social affordable housing. And this doesn't cut it in this location. So for all those reasons, I'd like to be able to say I'll let it go and let the neighborhood speak. But I think the neighborhood has already spoken in many ways. They bring up the same concerns that I'm mentioning. So I'm not in favor of this proposal at this time anyway. Maybe after we see how this all works itself out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Back, your comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll keep my comments fairly brief because we are at first reading and this project has been one that we've had a number of opportunities to look at, and I'll be one of the first to admit that while I was supportive of it from the outset, because I think when we're talking about putting this kind of density, this is the kind of location that it should be in for a number of the reasons that were already stated by a couple of my colleagues. Its proximity to transit, and it's a key part of a town center that we're really trying to build out. But what I would say is that this project is a much better project than it was initially. I love how it's evolved, both in terms of the green elements, the affordability, and I think that as it, should it proceed ultimately, I think will become a key part of the greater community down in this part of the district. I think a lot of the issues that are being talked about as reasons to vote against the project like this one are ones that many communities are dealing with, not just the District of North Vancouver. When we're talking about doctor shortages and things like that. These are issues that are being dealt with all across the province. And I think, when we can create homes for people, I know a lot of people that would love to live in a community like this one. And I think with some of the innovative models. First of all, just having more purpose-built rental, the 41 non-market rental homes, I think will provide opportunities for people that just don't exist at all right now on this particular site. So I am supportive of this going to first reading. I do want to hear what the public has to say. It's an important part of this neighborhood. So I'm happy to continue to offer my support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Councillor Curran, second time.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that I'm happy to share with any members of council a lot of the emergent science that makes it so clear about the critical piece about demand side measures and land use planning as being one of the most effective things we can do to reduce both energy and earth consumption. So it's the consumption-based emissions. We're also working on an embodied carbon policy that we just presented that staff just shared with the climate committee. And so I think there is room to improve on that in terms of policies. It's an emergent field. Vancouver has a target of 40% reduced emissions by 2030. And so we're looking at measures around that. And then just in terms of this conversation, which I do think is really important around an economy of care and how we are having society-wide, global-wide challenges around where we have put our priorities. And this is an opportunity to rethink that. And so it is going to have to work in partnership with the province and with other orders of governance to really prioritize funding for the social infrastructure that we value. And I think the pandemic has really shown us that we care, that health is really central to that. So that this issue that members of council have addressed is not unique to us. The targets that we have, they're not our targets that we set necessarily, in terms of being able to accommodate more people. And we're trying to create new 21st century communities, and that we're going through a time that's challenging. But I think I actually imagine what it would feel like to go down Marine Drive and have people, the vision that we had of people out on the sidewalks and being able to move in different ways that's healthier and quieter, and being able to work in different ways and being able to live in different ways. It's a beautiful community that we all get to share. And I think that these challenges are hard. I want to acknowledge that, but complete communities is one of the most effective things we can do. So we'll see what the community has to say.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curran. Okay, I see no further speakers from council, so it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Councillors Hanson and Forbes opposed, and I believe, Councillor Muir, you had your camera off, but you were clear in your comments that you're opposed. Thank you very much. So we'll record it as the motion has passed with Councillors Hanson, Forbes, and Muir opposed. Just check in with the clerk. When is this likely to return for a public hearing then? Do you have a date set in mind?
Through your worship, tentatively scheduled for May 31st, but we'll confirm with staff.
Okay, so we're proposing May 31st. That's a tentative date, which means that you have to wait until the agendas are produced leading up to that time to track that and see if that date slips. But at this point, that's the intended targeted time for the public hearing on this matter. Okay, thank you very much, Council. And I think the applicant in the room, it's probably not the number of councillors you really wanted, but the workers ahead of you, it sounded pretty similar to the early input period, I would say, in terms of the response. So thank you very much. Okay, council, that completes the regular business of the meeting tonight, but we are a little bit early, and so I think it'd be appropriate to have some time for council to produce some reports. If you have some items, community events that you'd like to report on, perhaps. I'll just start with my own report. I had the great pleasure of participating in the Lower Mainland Local Government Association convention last week in Whistler, and I haven't been to one of these conventions in a very long time, even pre-COVID. I didn't go in my first year as mayor, so it was back when I was on council. 2014 to 2018 would probably be what last time I went to one of these conventions. I have to tell you, I was blown away with some of the discussion about post-disaster response recovery when you have the mayor of Lytton sitting in the room talking about their experience, when you have the mayor of Abbotsford, you have the chair of the regional district speaking about their issues. It was very impactful and very enlightening as to how hard recovery is. Response is just a tiny little bit of it. It's the time when you get all of the attention, but recovery is so much more. Those communities are going to be in a recovery mode for a very long period of time, especially Lytton. And so I have to say my hat is off to the LMLGA executive for putting on a great convention. And certainly a lot of takeaways from that event. And it was great to see some people in person that I hadn't seen in person for a very long period of time, so that you can build those relationships with your neighboring communities rather than just Zoom calls all the time. So very appreciative for the opportunity to participate in that. Councillor Curran, you have a report?
I just wanted to share, speaking of Lytton and Abbotsford, which are both climate related events, we are working the climate committee in partnership with the library. I'm on the library board and the climate committee, and there's some exciting work happening around how we engage residents around climate change through libraries, which is really exciting. And then I was also at the LMLGA, and I'm pleased that the two reports on biodiversity, Species at Risk Act, and the Beyond GDP Wellbeing Index that was championed by the BC Assembly of First Nations both passed. So those will move on to the UBCM. And yeah, there was a lot of, I think hearing from, I was sat on that panel with the mayor of Abbotsford, and it just is so evident that we can stop making these climate change impacts worse by transforming our systems. And there were a lot of great ideas generated around the table around some leadership that's happening at the local level. And I think that's really exciting. So it was good to connect with folks masked from a distance. I don't know, I walked into that space and I was like, super spreader, just gonna stay back here, but I did what felt good to me, and we'll see how you'll end up. But it was nice to connect with folks. And yeah, lots of good shared stories. And I think that that's the exciting thing, is seeing, like, recognizing that collectively, when we do things locally, we can, be a lot stronger with our voice to the province, lobbying to the federal government, and then just being inspired by what other folks are doing. So it was a good event. And I also encourage everyone who's able to try to go next time.
And thank you for participating in that panel. That was great fun. Councillor Back, your report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I also attended the LMLGA conference this week and enjoyed the presentations, particularly the opening presentation. I thought set a good tone with Charles Montgomery, who's the author of a book called The Happy City. Always an inspiring speaker, and he set a nice tone for the rest of the short conference. Great to connect with other councillors and just hear about some of the challenges that they're trying to deal with in their communities. I also wanted to just mention that I attended a vigil that was held on Sunday, May the 1st at Lynn Valley United Church. It was held as a vigil to acknowledge what's happening in Ukraine and the ongoing conflict there. And it was put on by the Hillside Baptist Church, as well as Lynn Valley United, St. Clement's Anglican, and the North Shore Unitarian Church. There was also a presentation by an organization called the Maple Hope Foundation, which is a local nonprofit who is helping Ukrainians who are coming over, both in finding them housing and employment. So I was quite struck by their work and how they're directly helping people that are involved. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hanson, your report.
Thank you very much. And I also attended the Lower Mainland Local Government Association conference. There was, as you have said, Mayor Little, so many takeaways and so much we could talk about, but I wanted just to bring greetings which were extended at that event from Minister Nathan Cullen, the Minister of Local Government, and Minister Rob Fleming, the Minister of Transportation. And they both gave what I thought were thoughtful and constructive speeches. They spoke to the need for a collaborative and cooperative approach between the provincial government and local governments. They did discuss and address the issues of transportation, the fact that when we match population, when we bring in population growth, we need to envision the fact that we also need to have the services that people require, the medical services, recreational services, and transportation services. And I thought they were both of them very sensitive in their presentation to the local governments. And I came away with a positive, and I extend to the public of the district of North Vancouver. I think we have reason to believe that the provincial government will be sensitive and work with us as we address the pressing problems of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Forbes.
Just quickly, I did not go to the LMLGA, but I did recommend to a staff person who was going that it was an excellent convention to go to because it's local and it does deal with right here. It's not like across Canada or anything like that. And you usually do get lots of good information. So I'm glad to hear you guys all got it. Other than that, I've been making my rounds, so to speak, with community associations, trying to visit them and on their meeting nights and try to just get a feel for what they're concerned about and what they're wanting to have input on and any concerns that they may have about the district and DNV. And so I've had some good suggestions about communication, which is always hard to do, but I've had some suggestions about communication and I'm going to take them to the communications department. And also Rec Commission, we're having a workshop tomorrow night where we'll be talking about how the services are delivered, if there's a better way to deliver them or the services appropriate, is communications between both district and city and the Rec Commission. If we can have a more cohesive communication, or not more cohesive, but maybe could there be changes to make it even better? So I'm looking forward to the workshop tomorrow night. And that's my report.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor. Fantastic. Okay, well, seeing no further reports, then unless there are any reports from Mr. Joyce or Mr. Milburn from senior staff? Okay, hearing none, then we have completed the business of this evening's meeting. And so if someone move adjournment, moved by Councillor Bond, I will accept. Thank you all very much to the members of the public for sticking with us and participating through the meeting. Thank you to the staff for preparing all the materials that led up to the meeting. And thank you, Council, for your decisions tonight. We do appreciate your work. Everybody have a fantastic evening and I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting.